This afternoon, we are talking about some tips and tricks in production of strawberries. I will do my best to keep it about 30 minutes. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions. And after that, we will go through any questions you may have. Just a quick introduction. Strawberry is member of Rosaceae family. They are normally low-growing perennials with short compressed stem, and we call those compressed stem or this small plant a crown. So a crown is producing a whorl of leaves, flowers, and fruits, and so some type of runners that we are talking about. Many strawberry cultivars are spreading by producing above ground stems that we are calling them stolon, and then new daughter plants are forming from those stolons, as you see in the picture at the bottom. Combination of above ground stem and any attached daughter plant is called a runner. So when we are talking about runners, we mean a daughter plant with that stem that connects it to mother plant. If this plant, like the new daughter plant, is touching the soil, it will be independent. And if not, it still will remain dependent to the mother plant till we cut it off and plant it somewhere that can produce roots. Daughter plants are used for like commercial vegetative propagation by nurseries normally. If we want to briefly talk about their like fruit structure, normally when we are planting seeds, we are not having fruit types like type of plants and products. And strawberry fruit composed of fleshy receptacle, that this is the part that we are eating, and many achenes, that they are seeds, that they are those tiny seeds on the surface of the fruit. Also, where fruit is attaching to the stem, so we have some areas that those green areas are called calyx or cap. And if we are breeding some type of cultivars for processing, producing jam or so, normally we are breeding the way these cap or calyx parts are coming right off when we are picking the strawberry to save time. There are different types of strawberries. If we want to just categorize them based on like amount and frequency of fruit production, they can be June-bearing, ever-bearing, and day neutral. So what is the difference between these type of like strawberries? The growing practices for all these three categories is somehow same, but these type of varieties are, and these type of types are having differences that we talk about right now. So in June-bearing strawberries, they are producing fruit one time per year in normally late spring or early summer, and it like lasts almost 4 weeks, and then it's over. And after planting, they can fruit for the first time the year after planting. So literally they are producing like fruits the second year. June-bearing cultivars that we are talking about them, they are producing the most number of runners. And so they are good options for matted row planting system that we will talk about it today. These are good choices if we want to have a lot of fruit to get ready at the same time, and we want to harvest and freeze or make jam at once. So these type of strawberries are good options. Talking about second type of strawberries, the like ever-bearing strawberries are those type of strawberries that they fruit normally twice a year, one time in June and another time in late summer. And so they are producing very few number of runners after production of fruits, and they are normally less popular and less desirable than day neutral cultivars that we will talk about them. and they are not as productive. So the overall number of fruits that they are producing are less than ever bearers. The third type that I want to talk about, if my presentation loads, so they can be day neutral strawberries. So the day length doesn't matter in these type of strawberries, and they are producing fruits throughout the season continuously. So you always have like some strawberries to pick gradually during the season, and except those times that the temperature is too cool or too high. So they stop when the temperature is too high till the temperature drops, and then they continue producing fruits and flowers again. And these type of strawberries are producing fruits the first time in the same year that they are planted. So because of this reason, they are very popular. They are ideally planted in container or in the soil in the hill system that we will talk about. And because they are producing relatively few runners, they are good for these containers or the hill system and techniques that we are using for producing strawberries. A container, a wood-sided raised bed, or any raised bed made of mounded soil makes frequent picking easier if we want to use for these day-neutral strawberries. And retailers often include day neutral cultivars with everbearing types, which is wrong, and it causes lots of confusion. Talking about strawberry cultivars, there are many cultivars that they can work in state of Idaho. And so it's important that we are choosing cultivars that they are adapted to our region, and they are normally differ in fruiting season and cultural requirements and fruit quality, flavor, their appearance, size of fruit, tolerance to pests, cold hardiness, plant longevity, and processing characteristics. But if I want to talk about the most important factor to consider when we are choosing cultivars, probably being cold hardy for state of Idaho would be the most important one. You are familiar with USDA plant hardiness zone map, and you know that when we are clicking on it, we can look at our specific area. For example, for Idaho Falls, if we look, our zone, or like cold hardiness zone for Idaho Falls is gonna be 4A. So for zone 4A, if we look at list of different cultivars of strawberry, those cultivars that they are tolerant to zone 4, any like zone between 3 to 4 and so on, would be the good ones that we can choose based on their type and based on the zone. I will share the list of these cultivars that you can go through them if you need. So for selecting a site and planting, it's important that we know that for producing strawberries, normally 3 to 5 years, we can get the best yield. And after that, we need to replace plants. We can maximize the quality and quantity of fruits with good and careful site selection. And ideal environmental conditions, if we want to just generalize a couple of them, having a full sun and having a nice, fertile, well-drained, and not heavy type of soil like sandy loam or clay loam soil would be awesome. And moderate amount of water that prevents any waterlog and prevents any type of root rot in strawberries would be desirable. And raised beds or mounded rows, if we are constructing them correctly, they create enough height for providing adequate amount of drainage. Obviously, as we talked about, if we have poor drainage or if we have heavy soil, it leads to root death and root diseases. And also, before I go to the next slide, I want to talk about like how deep we are planting strawberries. You see the picture A, so it's exactly the correct one. that strawberry crown is exactly at the soil level. B, C, D are all wrong depth of planting. So strawberry is very sensitive to winter cold and frost damage in late winter and early spring, that we will talk about it. So good air circulation is important for us to prevent these type of problems. And frost protection is necessary in most locations, especially in East Idaho, when freeze and thaw cycles are frequent and they keep happening, and high winds are common. And like removing perennial weeds before planting is way better than trying to struggle and get rid of them after planting and when strawberries are planted. And purchasing virus, insect, and disease-free certified plants would be very important. We talked very briefly about two types of planting system. The first one is matted row system, which is ideal for June bearer strawberries that they are producing like a lot of runners. We can build rows on flat ground or raised beds, and they can be like 3 to 4 feet apart from the center of the row. And we can put like plants apart about like 10 to 15 inches in each row, as you see in this picture. Early runners should be allowed to grow and root. And my PowerPoint stopped for a moment. So then we are sweeping the runners into the row before they root and trying to keep the row width between 12 to 18 inches. Flower bud development in June-bearing strawberries, as we talked about, occurs in late summer for the next year. So when we are having those type of runners that they are getting, like they are produced very late in summer, they probably will not have enough time to produce the flower bud development. So it's gonna affect the number of flowers and fruits the next year. The second type is heel system. So for heel system of production, we are trying to keep plants individually and remove any type of runners. And so cultivars that they are producing fewer runners would be ideal. For example, day neutral type of strawberries that they are producing less runners would be ideal. Also, we can use this type of heel system that I'm explaining now for June bearers, but we need to remove the runners whenever they are emerging. Plants in heel system may be grown on flat ground or raised beds, in the soil or in the container. Aisles between rows or raised beds should be 1.5 to 2 feet wide, like 2 feet wide, as you see in the picture. We need to set plants 12 to 15 inches apart, and we need to remove runners as soon as they show up. But when we want to get rid of them, it's important that we let the daughter plant form, then remove the runners. But because if we just remove the runners, as soon as they just produce runners, but there is no new plant attached, we may trigger producing more runners rather than decreasing that. So for container growing, day neutral cultivars are the best types that we can produce in containers, and they are producing fruits continuously, and they are not producing that much runners to bother us in container production. And 10 to 18 inches deep and 12 inches spacing in diameter would be the container that we can use. You can plant up to 4 strawberries in 12-inch diameter pot. Soil pH between 5.6 and to 6.5, which is in acidic range, would be desirable for producing strawberries. And soil amendment to modifying the soil pH obviously can be used, applying sulfur, lime, and so on. But it's very important that we know that it takes time that the soil pH adjusts. For improving soil, we can use organic matter, like organic matters, and the only tip that we should consider is that they should be free of pest insects and weed seeds, and we can apply organic matter at rate of 1 to 2 inches deep for each area being planted, and we can add different type of fertilizers. Example for fertilizer, if we are using organic fertilizer, can be blood, feather, or fish meal that we can use. We can cover with an inch of soil. For fertilizing, obviously the best way, if possible, would be having the soil sample to test the soil before we are making decision about using fertilizers. So soil sampling should be done like almost 1 year in advance to provide enough time for us to get our result, and then in the soil, and then adjust the soil for getting that ready for plants. The depth of taking samples should be from top 6 to 12 inches of the soil that we are having the most strawberry roots. And recommended soil nutrient ranges, I will put the link of a extension paper from Oregon State University for an extensive and comprehensive information about nutrient management. But as an example, we are normally generalizing. It can be different based on different type of strawberries and different cultivars. But if we want to categorize to 2 categories, like fertilizers for new planted strawberries versus strawberries that they are well established. So the range can be a little different. For example, for strawberries that they are newly planted, 0.2 ounces of nitrogen per 10 feet of row would be nice. And then we can repeat that 1 month later and 2 months later till plants get established nicely. And then after that, we can use, like in June bearing cultivars, we can use 0.4 to 0.6 ounces after fruiting and renovation that we will talk about. And for day neutral and ever bearing cultivars, we are using almost the same amount that we were using in new planted strawberries. Mulching obviously is a very good way to protect strawberry plants. It controls weeds, especially annual weeds, conserves soil moisture, and provides a source of nutrients. It's important that we don't bury strawberry crowns with mulch because it can cause crown rot and plant death. And black plastic, as you know, is one of the most common type of mulch system that we can use. And we cannot use it in row technique because if you remember, we were having these type of runners and other plants that they were getting produced and they needed to get to the soil and produce roots. So we cannot use black plastic in those. Irrigation we can use drip irrigation system under these plastic mulches, and we can hand water or use overhead irrigation system. It's important that we remember that voles, field mice, and slugs can hide under the plastic mulch. And also it's important that we don't use deep straw as mulch during the growing season because it's gonna harbor slugs, vole, and field mice. Very briefly talking about irrigation. So sufficient irrigation during specifically the stage of fruit production is very important. It's essential for best yield and fruit quality, and the best color of fruits and the best taste. And for established strawberries, normally we require 1 to 2 inches of water per week. I would say for new grown strawberries, probably 1 inch gonna be enough per week. And obviously I'm giving like general idea. It can be different depend on plant vigor, plant size, stage of growth, and soil type, weather, etc. And In each irrigation, we need to make sure that we make the soil wet in depth of at least 0.5 to 1 feet. And as you know, sandy soils require more frequent and lighter amount of water. Drip irrigation would be very ideal for strawberry production, and it can reduce the amount of disease and weed problems, and it can also save water. A single line of drip irrigation per row with half-a-gallon emitters spaced every like 12 inches apart would be an example that we can use for producing strawberries. You see in these two pictures, if I want to give a general rule for early stages of producing strawberries, probably you can use a sprinkler system, and then later on for established plants, probably using drip irrigation systems would be nice, or you can use drip irrigation from the beginning. Harvesting strawberries is very important because strawberry fruit is not ripen after harvest. We know that there are two types of like fruit, that one of them are climacteric, another one are non-climacteric, means they don't like have respiration and production of ethylene gas, and they are not getting ripe after harvest. Strawberry is one of them, so it's important that we are picking them when they are completely red or at 75% red color development. Flavor, when we are harvesting like the strawberry, the color can develop a little more, but as far as flavor, if we want to have the best flavor, it's important that we are letting that get ripen completely on the stem. Air temperature greatly affects how quickly fruit ripens and how often they need to be picked. Obviously, in like areas that we have a high temperature or we have loss of rain, it's important that we frequently check fruits to make sure if they are ready or not. And if we have extended period of rain, we need to pick berries at 75% to 75% color development and to fully red color development. And normally it's important that we pick them before rain starts, because the rain can dilute the flavor and cause fruit rot. And it's important that for extended shelf life or storage, we pick fruits with a little bit of the stem and cap or calyx included. However, for those type of strawberries that we talked about for processing purposes or making jams, we are having those type of strawberries that they are coming just right off without those parts, green parts of calyx and cap, and it saves us time to process them. As a general rule, expected strawberry yields can be between 1 to 2 pounds per plant, or 7 to 15 pounds per 10-foot row. Obviously, the yield varies widely between, like, depending cultivar and planting age. The highest yield normally occur the second year after planting, which is the year 2, and after that it's slowly decreasing, especially between year 3 to 5. The quality is decreasing dramatically. The quality, size of fruits, number of fruits. And when we are making decision that plant is less vigorous, it's producing less number of fruits and so on, it's important that we are preparing new plot and planting new patch of strawberries and replacing the old ones. Renovating is a technique that we can use. It's like if I want to explain that in short, it's going to be a way of pruning strawberries. So June bearing strawberries that we are having, like we are done with harvest at once, we can like cut leaves and so on from 2 inches above the crown after harvest with a mower or hand pruner or hand shearer. And then we need to fertilize and irrigate that to encourage the leaf and runner growth. So it's one type of pruning. We don't have extensive pruning in strawberries, but it's important that if we want to have vigorous plants, we get rid of runners. The first year, probably we need to keep some runners to form some daughter plants in case some strawberry plants are dying and we want to replace them. And in day neutrals, it's important that the first year we cut first couple of cycles of flower clusters to make sure that the plant, the energy of plant is going towards increasing vigor of plant instead of producing low quality fruits. Removing old and sick leaves would be important. For cold protection, we have two types of cold damage in the strawberries. One is like winter protection and winter cold damage. In colder areas, we can use weed-free mulch, which can be coarse hay or straw that we are covering the whole plant with it. And in spring, we are removing all of it from top of the plant. The second type of cold damage can be spring frost that can kill early flowers. We will see the picture in next slides. And we can use like sprinkler plants with water to and continue running water till we make sure that the amount of the degree of the temperature is getting higher. You see the picture of cold damage in strawberry crown, how it's getting sliced lengthwise. You see these blackened centers in flowers when we are having frost injury. In strawberries, it can happen in open flowers in around 30 Fahrenheit degrees, and in closed flowers, it can happen around 28 Fahrenheit degrees. Obviously, these type of flowers are dead and they are not producing any fruit. These type of mal-shaped fruits that we are seeing, they are normally sign of poor pollination. And when we are having too much rain, cloudy days, cool weather, bee activities, and consequently pollination will be limited and number of fruits will be limited and fruits will be grooved or pinched in. Other type of damage to fruits, the first picture that you see on top left, it's injury of low temperature, which is cold and dry temperatures. It affects fruit development and deforms fruits. The middle picture, which we see the nice color in the middle, but like those tips are staying white in strawberries. It's normally because of cold temperature early in the season. And the third damage, which you see in the picture on top right, is because of high temperature or contacting with like hot mulches, contacting fruits with hot mulches. So this is some type of burn in fruits. Talking very briefly about pest and disease problems. Okay, so obviously different type of animals can cause different problems that we can use some type of fence to exclude them. If we want to talk about insects, spotted wing and Drosophila is one of the most important problems. You see these white, small, like larvae that they are like feeding inside the berry, and they are look like fruit fly normally. And fine exclusion netting would be one of the ways that we can use to get rid of them. Root weevils are another problem that can happen. For controlling them, we can collect adult ones at night and destroy them. And for aphid and spider mites, we can hose off and use insecticidal soap-like sprayers. You see the damage of a spider mite in the picture on top right. Spittle bugs and slugs are two other type of like pests that they are damaging strawberries, and it's important that we control them. Talking about diseases, there are different types of pathogens that they are causing diseases. One can be gray mold, that fruits are getting like moldy and they are dark. We will see the picture in the next slides. And it's mostly because of the rain during the bloom or fruit development stages. Anthracnose is another type of rot that it can happen in warm, humid, rainy days during the fruit development. We will see the picture of that in next slides. So botrytis or gray mold, you see the pictures and you see the anthracnose, that these like deep dark spots are happening, and also powdery mildew in leaves and fruits are happening, and it's one of the most important pathogens. Talking about post-harvest, which is the last slide. So for post-harvest, it's very important that we consider stage of ripening of fruits, cleanness of like techniques that we are using for harvest, and the temperature of growing plants and the temperature at time of harvest should be considered. The better plant nutrition contribute with the firmness, color, and overall quality and taste of fruit. If we want to have the maximum shelf life, probably keeping fruits in optimal temperature and picking fruits early in the day before the temperature rises would be the best way. Thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to address.
Thank you, Sarah. We so appreciate that. That was a very comprehensive course on strawberries.
Yeah.
No, we had some of the gray mold brought into our office this summer on strawberries. So yeah, there's problems out there. So if you guys have any questions, oh, we do have a question in the chat here. Greg asked, what are consequences of planting too deep or too shallow?
That's a very good question. So if we are planting any type of plant, including any trees, perennials, and so on, or annuals, if we are putting the crown under the soil, it can cause like plant rot. And so it can cause lots of problems. And also mostly in like trees, when we are planting them, it's very important that we are not planting them too low or too high. It can cause lots of problems, and it prepares environment for rot and or root dryness and so on. So we need to keep the crown, which we call the exact area that we are attaching the stem to, that the stem is attached to the root, the crown, in trees and in different type of plants. So the crown should be exactly at the surface of the soil as a like general rule.
Okay, and then he asked a question about fertilizer. Is top dressing with granular nitrogen adequate from monthly fertilization? Can granulars be placed tightly around plants in plastic mulches for production systems?
Okay, very good question. So we need to remember to put the link of that like article about fertilizing strawberries in the chat. It's very comprehensive, and you can like see the different types of like strawberries and their need for fertilizer. So for those that they are producing like products or fruits at once, or for those that they are producing gradually, you can see comprehensive information. But yeah, slow release fertilizers or those type of nitrogen granules that they are slow release would be nice if we are using that during the season, or like just once at the beginning. But like it's not very specific, because we need to know like our soil needs and the content of nutrients and so on before we make decision. But as a general rule of thumb, probably, yeah.
Sarah, I'll add one quick thing. This is just Reed. Just make sure on any of your berry crops, raspberries for sure, but strawberries also, be careful of over fertilization, especially with nitrogen, because good berry production and sugar set has a lot to do with stressing the plant out a little bit with nitrogen during that berry production year, just like with beets, red beets and stuff. So, over fertilization, right, Sarah, can be just as bad as under fertilization. I see she's
absolutely not. Very, very good point. Yeah. So for grapes, for any type of berries, like decreasing irrigation and fertilization, like and stressing plant a little bit, especially after like the fruit development, between development and ripening, would be desirable. In my country, even for melons, like growers are stopping irrigation probably a couple of weeks before harvest to give a small shock to like fruits and make sure that their taste and color development and so on is getting better.
Sarah, I always say it's like raising kids. You got to stress them just a little bit to have them be great.
Yeah, actually, I was reading a paper about neuroscience that in human brain, these type of like synapses and networks are forming when we are going through challenges in life. So yeah, absolutely.
You've proved Reed's theory.
I know. Thank you, Sarah. That's great. You proved what I've always said.
Another question in the chat here. Julie asks, I've heard that digging up and turning the soil in the strawberry bed is a good way to prepare for winter. What do you think about this technique?
I never heard about it, but yeah, if we are considering soil as a just probably some type of mulch, am I understanding the question right? Can you
Well,
help me?
Sarah, I think it's hard to till these beds because, they all the little runners go out and they randomly go back in the soil. So
Right.
while it would be really, really good to till lots of soil in the fall, I mean, that gets rid of disease and gets it aerated and stuff.
So
It's
true.
difficult.
Yes.
So it would be good to do, but I'd like to see how you're going to do that in a strawberry bed,
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's what they're talking about. It'd
Any
be
other
good, but it's just
question,
different.
comment?
So I was just thinking, I remember my great uncle used to kind of do that to his strawberry beds. And his purpose was kind of to break up some of the older crowns and hopefully get some new runners by doing kind of a rejuvenation kind of process. Probably not the best way to do rejuvenation, but that's
Well,
why
I
I
think that there
stuck
is
around
some,
a
I think,
pitchfork in the fall.
I think there is some merit to that, Lena, too, because, if you
Okay.
think about it, in our pastures and stuff, we'll harrow, and there's light harrowing, which gets a little bit of growth, and then there's heavy harrowing, which is renovation, pasture renovation. So, getting in there doing some heavier, kind of getting rid of the older ones would be fine, in my opinion, because as long as you just don't tear up everything, because remember, it's gonna have to have some of those crowns be left behind.
Yeah, and Lena, you are absolutely right. It can trigger and encourage production of more runners if it's the goal.
Now, my strawberry patch is actually, there's plastic mulch underneath it, believe it or not. Lots of people say you can't do that, but I just punched holes every foot through the mulch, that good woven mulch, and I put I just planted them right in there. And oddly enough, after those all got established, I just poked some more holes in it, opened some holes, and those runners went and found the new holes. And as the old ones kind of got old, I pulled them out of there and they found the new holes. And so even in a heavy mulch type situation, you can do that renovation of the crowns and stuff and get new crowns.
Absolutely. I put the paper that I talked about like nutrient management in strawberries. I believe the paper is from Minnesota State University, and another one is like just a USDA hardiness zone map of Idaho that you can click on a specific city and location and see the like minimum and maximum temperature and the zone of your area.
We do have another question. So this one's not about strawberries. If you guys have more strawberry questions, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat and Sarah can answer those. But we also have Reed here for plant talk. So Morgan asked, I have an English walnut tree and a cherry tree that I had removed last year. The tree stumps for both the cherry and the walnut tree are sending suckers close to the stumps. What happens if some of the suckers are allowed to grow?
As long as there's just one sucker allowed to grow, it works out okay. It's not the best way, because anytime you have a sucker, they're more weakly attached than if they had been, grown from seed and from rootstock, or like with an apple tree grafted on and things like that. So any of those suckers are going to be weakly attached. But sometimes you can regrow a tree if you want to. I mean, it comes down to the fact, did you cut it down for a reason in the first place, and do you want another walnut tree? But yeah, you can regrow them, but it's always going to be more weakly attached is the problem, in my humble opinion. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And also I want to add, in addition to what you said, that we always need to consider that any sucker that comes up, if we want to keep it, we need to remember that if our tree is grafted, we will not see the same fruit at all. So it comes from normally comes from rootstock. So if you want to keep it and plant it later and graft it, that's fine, but don't expect the same quality. Some arborists believe that we need to keep suckers in the field. They are part of plant. They are like providing nutrients and so on. And some horticulturists believe we need to get rid of all suckers. They are draining energy and nutrients from plants. So these are two different ideas about keeping them or getting rid of them based on our goal. Probably in horticulture and gardening, I would say we need to get rid of them.
Yeah,
In
I agree.
forestry, I would say that we need to keep them because we need more vegetation.
I agree with that, Sarah. You know, especially with those cherry trees, it's hard to tell, but most of the time suckers are from the rootstock, which won't give you the same cherries you had before. And you know, the other ones up in that grow straight up, the water sprouts are usually from the grafted on tree. The other thing is that there is one horticultural reason in your garden to keep the suckers around, and that is if you have your apple trees or your cherry trees or something get girdled by these voles in the winter, which has happened. And then you can take and I've taken 3 of those and grafted the sucker over the top of the girdling mouse chew marks and saved the tree. And you can do that for a year after the girdling happened, believe it or not. The tree doesn't die really fast. And so that would be one other reason for having suckers. Other than that, I think, Sarah, you're right. Get rid of them in your orchards.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had offered to bridge graft a tree for my cousin, but her dog on the chain had girdled it, and she wasn't going to stop chaining the dog right next to the tree. So I said, well, it's not worth my time to spend a whole afternoon bridge grafting this tree for it to just happen again. So
yeah, it's not easy, and yeah, it may not even work. Is the tree girdled all over?
Yeah, and it was probably a 6-inch wide part of the trunk too. It wasn't a little girdle, it was a lot.
Yeah, it probably won't make it.
So we have
that you got at McKee's there, those strawberry stars. My son just started his garden because he bought a house last year, so he put those in, and they're good. They're doing good, you know.
variety.
Yeah, they're good. And McKee's is a great place to get plants from. They try to do the best they can with getting you good stuff.
So my daughter found these strawberries. Oh, it's actually at our plant promotion. They had hot pink flowers on them. And she's like, oh, Mom, we have to have these in the fairy garden. But they have really sweet fruit on them too. They're just smaller than, you know, your average. They're more of like a jam-sized strawberry, but they're pretty good too. So, and they had red flowered ones too. We just got the pink ones. But anyway, Morgan says the squirrels have been planting his walnuts all over the neighborhood. They do that with mine too.
Yeah, in 19 years I've only harvested, we had 2 walnut trees. In 19 years, we've only harvested walnuts once. But I noticed the neighbor across the street, he had a couple 6-foot walnuts, I think the squirrels planted and stuff. So yeah, they enjoy them.
Yeah.
Squirrels are good gardeners sometimes. Squirrels are good gardeners sometimes. Well, they can plant things.
You get them to dig where you want.
Right.
Where you want.
Well,
to add on to his question about burying the strawberries too deep or too shallow, he said, in other words, it's likely to be soon apparent if the plants are planted too deep or too shallow.
No, it'll take time to find out. It won't be a problem really fast.
And it doesn't always like kill the plant, but it increases the chance of rot and other problems for sure.
But you may not notice it for quite a while. So
yes,
best just to plant them at the right depth, because no, you won't plant them at the wrong depth, and you won't know that the next day. It won't. No.
Yeah.
I think that's what the question was.
Yeah.
Remember, I always have a great answer, but I don't always listen to the question.
Any other questions?
Sarah, you did great. You did wonderful. That was a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. It's like coming slowly better, I would say.
Yeah. My grandkids came over tonight. In fact, they're in the other room raising cane. And they were eating my strawberries they were a little bit, just barely turning pink. And then they hit a good one. They go, Grandpa, why is that? That just happened tonight. Grandpa, why is this one so good? And I guess it's red. So my grandkids were learning that tonight.
My neighbors keep wanting to pick my blackberries for me because I have so many beautiful black ones, but they've just barely turned black and they're still very sour and not ready to pick. I'm telling them, you have to wait. You have to let them be black for a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're usually the tastiest right before the birds get them, or right before the slugs get them, or right before they fall off. Like
Yeah.
I know my peaches in the back. I was picking them and they were a little bit my wife likes them a little bit crunchy, you know, those peaches. I got those Saturn peaches, you know, and she likes them a little crunchy, so she'll eat about a fourth of them that way. And then right before I went to Montana this last weekend, they were just barely getting ready, so I picked a bunch for my son up there at Montana State. And then when I got back home, half of them had fallen off onto the lawn. So this ripening thing happens really fast sometimes.
Yeah. Well, Greg also said, my strawberries are not growing to the size I would like. Is there a way to increase fertility without redigging and replanting, since phosphate and potassium don't move in the soil?
Yeah, they need, I'll throw something out there, Sarah. First of all, make sure they got light. If they're shaded most of the day, they're not going to do very good. So I've noticed that people ask questions, then I come to their house and it's basically underneath a tree. So light, and then also not a lot of nitrogen fertilizer. If they're next to your lawn and you're fertilizing your lawn, they're getting way too much nitrogen. That's the two main culprits I have. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, Greg, are you asking about overall size of plant or size of berries?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
I think he means size of fruit.
Yeah, I assumed we're
Okay.
talking about fruit here.
Yeah, okay. So as a general rule, I would say if your strawberries are like everbearing, or those that they are like constantly producing strawberries, generally their size is a little smaller than those that you are harvesting at once, than those June bearing ones. It can be like very related to cultivar. If the, like based on the cultivar, the size is small, that's not something that you can increase it that much. But if like in compared to other plants in the same cultivar and the same type, you would say still the size is small, that's something that good cultural practices. You can work on it, but yeah, as you say, like the soil amendment and stuff, gonna
And one more thing, Sarah,
take
that
time.
I was thinking of while you were saying that, is that the irrigation has to be right all season long. And one of the reasons why people get these small berries is they'll do good with the irrigation the first 3 weeks, and then the irrigation is erratic. Erratic irrigation, whether it's too much, too little, too much and then too little, and then too much, you know what I'm saying? Just crappy irrigation monitoring and management will cause those small berries. You've got to irrigate it and then use up a little bit more than half the moisture, then irrigate it and lose up a little bit more than half the moisture. That means you've got to watch what's going on constantly throughout the season. If you don't, the plant will experience erratic watering, and strawberries are very susceptible to iron chlorosis and other things that are visible, but also poor fruit set because of erratic watering. So just, you might say, is it too much, too little? I'm just saying, it's just not good. You're not watching what's going on.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely right. I agree that like fluctuation in irrigation is even worse to me than waterlog or drought, because like when you have a not a severe drought that kills the plant, if you have a moderate amount of drought, plant has this chance to draw like tolerance. But this fluctuation like just gonna decrease the quality and doesn't give plant any sign to adopt based on the changes of the like stressors and the amount of water that fluctuates during the season. That's absolutely right.
So I haven't grown a ton of strawberries myself, but I used to help my grandpa in his garden on Friday afternoons, and he tried about every strawberry under the sun. And it just seemed to me like whatever he tried, it never got as big as was promised or as the pictures in the garden. And I don't know if that's like an Intermountain West problem, like a high desert problem, or what, because I feel like when I lived in the South, people had big strawberries, but he's in northern Utah, and I just feel like, nothing he ever did, even the bigger ones he'd get were still not as big as the pictures, not as big as the ones from the store. And so I just don't know if that's achievable here, or I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I do know that when I went to McDonald's one time with my wife, I ordered a Big Mac and they handed it to me, and I looked at it. I says, "No, I want the one that looks like the one up there on the marquee." You know, it never looks the same. Yeah, we live in a desert environment. I mean, it is difficult to garden around here. That's not just true of strawberries and raspberries. That's true of peaches and almost anything you can grow, except for things that are really, really well adapted. And honestly, the things that are really, really well adapted to Idaho is wheat and barley, alfalfa, and spuds. So if you want to have things grow the best in the nation, you got to do that. There's a question down there about the leaves turning red. And
Yeah.
so I'm thinking, mine, I'd never worried too much about that. The older leaves sometimes will just turn red, and I've never worried about it. I always have some older leaves turning red.
It does seem like that's kind of a normal thing from strawberry patches I've looked at. Our strawberries at the office are half red right now.
What do you think, Sarah? I've never worried about that. Mine, there's a lot of red leaves on mine right now.
Yeah, if I would say if it's just edges, can be spider mite, but like rather than that,
I think in the fall they just turn red a little bit. Yeah, and it's not
Yeah,
all of them.
yeah, if
Some of the
it-
leaves turn red. I
yeah,
don't
if
think
it's
a
not
disease.
stress and if it doesn't weaken the plant, it can be like any environmental factors.
I guess it could be, Sarah. You could look at the plant that those red leaves are mostly around, and that might be one of those crowns you want to dig out and rejuvenate with a newer crown, you know.